was in a London private equity event a couple of years ago, and I was sitting with some of my contemporaries, most of whom are partners in private equity firms. And I said, listen guys, has anything changed? Has anything changed over the years? What are the top 3 things now that you look for in a great deal? And they said management, and then they said management, and you can probably guess what they said third. So I think behind all these great numbers are great people, both with the investee company and, if I may say so, with the PE firm, with the advisors. James brought up, plan early. James has had to bring in people to take them from that very impressive 3 million to where they are now. And they chose, I think, very well in the PE house and the partners they chose. And I think they were very well advised on that transaction. So it is, at the end of the day, it's your plan. And one of the things I want to say to you is don't forget, it's not your transaction, it's your plan. And I'll recap that at the end. Your plan for the future of the business that you created or you managed. And it's the efficacy, the veracity, the deliverability of that plan that will govern the quality and the value of the transaction. The transaction, the deal, is a subset of the plan, not the other way around. And I think that is a consciousness that maybe needs to be raised more in the Northwest. It's not about the deal, it's about the plan for the company. I'd like to invite Fiona McKay on that note, an expert on people, consults about people, tells private equity firms whether to back a particular CEO or not, looks at management teams, assesses management teams, diagnoses management teams, coaches management teams. Welcome, Fiona.
Wow, I do a lot there, don't I? Right, let's move on. Morning, everybody. As Adnan said, my name is Fiona, and I'm the Managing Director of Lightbulb Leadership Solutions. We are a leadership, management and human capital consultancy that advises private equity advisors on whether to back management teams, but equally we work with ambitious business leaders like yourselves and their management teams to help them achieve the key milestones in their organisations once private equity deals have been done. Now, there are a variety of different ways within which we can do that, but first and foremost, we need to understand about this backability of the management team and the skills and the capabilities that need to be present to get you from where you are to where you need to be. Now, around that, there are individual capabilities and then there are organisational capabilities. And fundamentally, we want to be able to see as part of the growth plan, your human capital plan. Now that's very different from the HR subset. The human capital plan, and you've probably heard this if you go into other private equity events and you're meeting with your advisors, you hear it all the time. The battleground is around the human capital plan. But what does that actually mean? We need to unpack that. Why is that attractive to investors, and why is it business critical for you to be able to achieve your key milestones and achieve the financial objectives you want to achieve for your firm? Well, first and foremost, let's just bust some myths. A human capital plan is about how the people achieve growth and the structures and systems behind it that allow the organisation to apply where those roles need to be and how they can unlock value. Now, is that the role of HR or is it a business central function? It's a business central function. Now, it is important in the diligence process that we have a look at your HR data to support that human capital plan, because that gives us a real pulse point on the kind of culture that the management team are creating. Now, if there are a high number of disciplinaries, if there are a lot of grievances, if there are big legacy exits that we're going to have to plan for, yes, we need to see those numbers, and that gives us an indication on what that value might be in the human capital plan. But fundamentally, how do you value culture? And how can we maintain that culture? And how does it need to change? And this is one of the ways within which we can help private equity investors really buy businesses for and sharpen the pencil on a much, a much greater way. If those things aren't necessarily as robust as what you think they should be right now, you still might get the investment, but the critical question we have to ask through diligence is how much does the private equity house need to invest in order to put that right, and then we can chip at the multiples. Good for investors, but not so great for you as business owners. So moving forward, that's chipping at the plan. Human resources. Now, do your human resource teams actually have the capability to create an agile human capital plan for you, which is attractive? This is part of your growth plan. As Adnan was saying, we want to see what the plans and the propositions are. Now, it was an interesting point that Dan made as well, about making sure that there's incentivization for the talent team coming through, especially if it's on an MBO. How can you actually identify where your talent sits currently within your organisation, and how can you develop them through? So they are part of a very clear plan of succession. Or equally, if you're going to have to go out to the market, what role requirements need to be in place to be able to attract that talent in? Now, interestingly, we're working with an organisation at the moment who are a recruitment business. They've had 15 million of investment in, and in the US, one of their key growth objectives is to hire 10 new hires a month with 5 new offices at the end of year 1. Now, that is a huge undertaking, so the talent framework that needs to be behind that has got to be really, really strong and robust. Secondly, the time to hire ratios have got to come down. And thirdly, we're coming back to culture again. What is the culture of your business? People will be attracted to high growth organisations, but the culture and the development opportunities that they're going to have are the things that are going to make them stay and flourish. So if your culture is great, how are you going to preserve it? But equally, going forward, where does it need to be tweaked, amended and changed? Now, when we're working as advisors to private equity houses, they often ask us to undertake a valuation of the management team. And that can pull people up short at some point. They don't expect it. Well, our plan's really strong, sound, the figures are looking good, but really? Are we going to have a look at us? Yes, especially if an MBO and you're quite, there's still some way to go. The investors want to know how much hands-on they're going to have to get involved in, or where they may need to bring in perhaps extra NEDs to support you along the way. So it's interesting again what James was saying out at the outset about when his corporate CEO came on board and he had real visionary muscle. When we're looking at leadership valuation indexes, we break it down into 2 areas, the individual and the organisation. What is the value of the management team? And what criteria are we looking at? Well, at Lightbulb, we assess on the following. Your visionary muscle. How visionary is the management team? How much vision are they able to create, not just for selves, but an environment where it can be connected and collaborative? So vision cascades up and down, across and below. Secondly, we're looking at judgment. Your judgment, execution, and the impact that you have as a team. The plan is great, but how are you going to be able to execute it, and how are you going to be able to galvanise the rest of the team to follow you with that vision and be aligned and have skin in the game? Because some people in the organisation won't have financial skin in the game. That's the deal. So how are you going to incentivise them to keep them aligned and keep them on point and follow you with a committed, trusted following? Feedback. Now, Adnan said, I've spoken at the UN. I led a 10-year research project, which I published the results of last year at the UN, you know, it was a very proud moment for me, on the effects of workplace feedback. Is it different for men? Is it different for women? Are the gender stereotypical variances? And the results are, yes, it is, and it's having a huge impact on profitability, performance, women's access to leadership positions, and also women's poverty in retirement. Now, at this point, I also want to pick up the ED&I requirements in your human capital plan. Investors know full well that diversity delivers profits. We want to see the diversity plan for your business, not just the little bit of ED&I training that you've done over there, or the odd bit of unconscious bias training. We want to see a formulated plan which is part of the growth strategy. Diversity delivers. You've probably read the McKinsey report. It's pretty simple. Ethnically diverse boards, particularly, have 33% more chance to outperform industry medians by simply having that spread and that diverse mix on the board. These are critical numbers. It's not the soft stuff. In terms of the board, we want to see the dynamics. Adnan and I was talking about this, particularly in the preparation plan. You often see the CEO, the CFO, and the COO out front. But we need to see how the team actually executes and delivers together. They are much more valuable as a total sum, but equally, where are their individual strength parts as well? We put you through strength tests. And from an organisational perspective, culture, talent frameworks, engagement, retention, reward packages, and the whole ED&I footprint. But as Dan said, once capital comes into the business, often leaders, in my experience, are really, their head turns 360 at the pace of change that you're going to have to deliver on. Now, change is a fundamental word here. What plans have you got in place, and how can your business support that challenge of change across the whole of the piece? Every single person will be involved in that change. But we also need to understand timelines. How you develop as a management team is critical to investors because they have their own timeline, 3 to 5 years. And upon exit, they want to increase your value as a management team to be able to get more out of the deal. So you really need to understand that the development of you as a team and the whole of your organisation isn't just about your timeline, it's about the timeline of their investments in their portfolio too. Now, in succession, this is critical, how we're going to get the next talent through. But succession is often seen as a generational thing. But talent, we see time and time again, is hidden away in organisations. But a team is only ever as good as who is on the bench. But who's on the bench is important, but are they match ready? How much work do we need to do? Do we need to invest in coaching, leadership development, assessment centres? What is the plan behind it? And we want to see more than one token woman on the bench. ED&I produces deliverable, profitable results. We want to see the visibility on those numbers, and those numbers need to be part of that change plan. But family businesses bring their own real little quirks. Lineage does not necessarily equate to leadership. And this can be a very painful piece of feedback that one has to take, particularly if you have children, your children in the business, and you see a very prominent role for them within the deal. The investors might not. And we have to be able to give strong evidence of what that is. But these are the things that happen. It is part of the reality of the deal. So you need to have to prepare yourself for a lot of letting go. And for a lot of owner managers, that's very, very difficult to do. And they need help in the transition around that. But there's one thing that family businesses either do really, really well in deals or awfully. And that's prepare and incentivise the business who they've brought, the people along the way. They want them to be part of the future, and they want to say thank you. Probably more in my experiences than non-family businesses, or they go completely the other way, hunker down, keep everything in, want to be totally risk averse about it, and it's an inner circle tree of trust thing. You're not involved, and that creates so many cascading cost consequences. And there is nothing more guaranteed than to undo a really good investment, and that is a whole load of people problems that we have got to start fixing. So, lessons to learn and key takeaways. You need a really strong human capital plan. Now, as a starting point for you, just as a very top line template, I've put one of our acceleration plans in here for you to take away and at least to start thinking about plotting. Number one, retention. Who needs to be retained and how are you going to do it? What's going to be the retention plan? Not just to the deal, but through the deal cycle and beyond. Release. Who is not going to be part of the plan going forward, and where do we need to start taking those steps right now? Reach. Feedback is critical to this. How can you have an open feedback culture where you can get the feelings, the thoughts, the ideas, and the innovation through in the process of change? And remove. What structural customs and practices have you currently got in place that are not helping you, that are in your gift to change today and could affect your deal multiples? So, those are very big steps to take. A human capital change structure is very different than a compliance HR approach. We have a dedicated private equity team, business psychologists, performance coaches, change management experts, ED&I experts, succession planners, data analysts, and exec coaches. Now, if any of you would like to talk after today, we can go into the rooms and have a chat, but we can keep in touch on social as well through Lightbulb and also with me on Twitter. But apart from that, I think Adnan wants to come back on the stage now to sort of wrap up the total Q&A for the morning. It's been great to talk to you. I'd love to continue the conversations, and thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
Does anyone have any burning questions for Fiona just before we move on to Q&A and wrap up? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so organisational DD is we now call it is a key pillar of the sort of investment DD. Do you do much on the vendor side? So you have vendor financial due diligence, vendor market reports. Do you ever do any sort of package reports for clients to give to potential interested
Yeah, we
parties?
do, and those are the leadership valuations. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, both from the individual, organisational, from ED&I, whatever the pain points you're asking for. Yes, we can do that, and I can explain how we do that for you in a consequential step. But the answer to the question is yes.
I would add to that, Dan, that the management plan, the human capital plan, is going to be more and more important, and if you don't have a particularly good plan, that you are being assessed as a human capital team, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not. And it's interesting that you said it comes as a shock. Oh, they're going to evaluate us. You mean, looked at our numbers, the numbers are great. We're great at selling whatever we sell. Well, yeah, get ready for scrutiny, because I think sometimes it's done very quietly. In the old days, wasn't it, Fiona? Someone like you would attend a meeting which really you were assessing something different from what people in the meeting were thinking they were there to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I think back to sort of 7-8 years ago, often when investors are having a dinner, they would say, Fiona, can you come along with a couple of your team? You know us really well, you know the characteristics of our house, you know what works for us. Do you think this is going to work? You know us. What do you think you know this sector? That has changed significantly in the last 3 to 5 years. It is a much more data-driven approach, and we need empirical hard evidence, and therefore those valuations are critical, because the numbers on this matter to the deal. They are crucial.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you. I'm conscious of everyone's time, so thank you for your patience and your participation. I just want to, again, encourage any questions outside of this Q&A. You can come and meet any of us. My business cards will be in the packs that you'll receive. Please feel free to. There are a number of UHY partners and team leaders in the room. Fiona's here, Dan's here. Feel free to reach out to any of us either now or at some point. I'm happy to talk through your transaction, your deal, your thoughts, and have a holistic discussion about what actually is the right plan for your company. I'm going to summarise, if I may. Today, these are your takeaways for today, hopefully. It's all about management, management, management. It's your plan, as well as your deal, as well as your company, that will determine its success. If your company's plan for success is very good, your company will get you a lot of money in a transaction today. It's important in your mind that you make that connection. A plan is only as good as its underpinning strategies. I think James alluded to it, the structure. I think that's where advisors can add most value, not just corporate finance advisors, but advisors generally. And I think picking corporate finance advisors that are more aware of the strategic aspects of the business as well as the financial model, I think is very, very important, because they need to assess the quality and the deliverability of those underpinning strategies, whether that be a rolling budget, or whether that be human capital, whether that be retention, whether that be marketing, whether that be which markets to sell in, advertise in. So a broader take. Your plan is only as good as the underpinning strategies. Have a dynamic budget. Just as a financial point, a geeky point, the best companies are the ones that have a rolling dynamic budget. So typically a 3-year rolling budget that responds and changes to actuals during the year. A budget should not be a static financial document that becomes irrelevant at month 6 or month 8 because there's been a recession, because you've had a deal fall over, or whatever. And lastly, plan early. It's never too early to talk to advisors. It's never too early to have meetings with potential funders and investors. And in fact, the earlier you talk, the more your own thoughts will solidify and formulate as to what does this transaction look like, the perfect transaction, who are the perfect partners, and what is the perfect future for your business. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much.